We were learning. So there are a couple of things I want to talk about today, and there's a number of them. And Bahia and I, now that she's here, will share some of the information, the research that she's done. And really, right now, the focus that I have is understanding the difference between, again, social distancing, which does not mean social disconnect. And I want to talk a little bit about why that's important, not just in general for anybody. It's we as human beings very naturally are seeking to connect. That's a natural kind of a disposition. But for African Americans in particular, Latinx folks, Native people, it represents a whole lot more. Part of it has to do with our primary value systems, our axiology, which is the relationship between people. Every group of people on the planet have axiologies, have their primary values. Our values aren't right or wrong. They're not good or bad. They're just different. And so I want to really speak to why it's so important for us to maintain these relationships. And I want to talk about intimacy. I want to talk about intimacy because I think we have a very distorted perspective of what intimacy is. And I think part of the relationship piece that I'm talking about in terms of our desire, our need, and our values around connecting, it has a little bit to do with that notion of intimacy and being close. And so what intimacy actually means is closeness. It means friendship. And very interestingly, the Dakara people in Burkina Faso look at intimacy as a chance and opportunity to share spirit. And I think that is just such a wonderful concept. And the whole idea of extended family that we talk about, especially as it relates to social services, when we start talking about the whole idea of community or family or extended, we put all these names on it, right? Mm-hmm. So in different parts of West Africa, you don't have an aunt or auntie, or you're actually sister and mother. You occupy a very close, intimate relationship with those who in this culture would consider that extended family. For example, let's say that most organizations, most corporations, they have sort of like a rules around when you're able to have bereavement, when you're able to have sick leave, when you are caring for a family member. So, for example, if someone doesn't show up at work, in most Northern European environments, they ask you why. You say, well, there was we had a family issue. Someone in the family was sick. And the assumption then is that's your immediate partner, your husband, your wife, your child, maybe your mother. But for me, it could be my niece. Okay. And that's perfectly appropriate for me to say, my niece was having some issues. My sister needed me, or, my brother needed me, and I'm going to be there. It's no different for me. But for them, they're going, well, Joy, you really need to get your priorities straight. You have a problem with your priorities. And I'm thinking, I don't have a problem with my priorities. You have a problem with my priorities. Right. I think that has to do with our whole idea of family and connection. So I'm saying that on a very fundamental level, we have this need to connect. For example, one of the things I was thinking about recently, and I often use this, anybody who's seen me, and I'm talking about how important relationships are and how important greeting is in African-American culture, Latinx communities. Why is greeting so important is because the greeting establishes a relationship. So that's the bottom line. So I'm thinking right now when they're saying, you got to keep 6 feet away from people. You don't touch me. Don't breathe my way. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's like crazy, right?
So don't breathe my way.
I'm sorry, what?
Don't breathe my way. Don't breathe my way.
Don't breathe my way. I saw a woman, I thought she was going to pass out because I was near her. And it's real interesting because this is absolute truth. The majority of folks, like my husband and I, we went bike riding yesterday. We go on walks and we'll see different couples walking down the street. Now, whenever we pass someone of color, they're like glad to see us. Hi, how you doing? There's this kind of connection that's made. And when I'm looking at white people, usually they don't say anything and they try to distract themselves and move further away. And it's very, I don't know what that's about. I'm looking at it from the vantage point of our values of relationship and culture and what part that plays. But I was thinking about this recently. I said, I know somebody Black's going to come up with this. First of all, it's not going to be me, but somebody Black is going to come up with the handshake in the air. Because, when we greet, it's ceremonial, right? We are hugging, and next they can slap you on the side, kiss you, and all kind of stuff can happen. So I'm going,
handshake in the air. What would that look like?
It's like, how you going? Some brothers gonna find a way to figure out what the air handshake is gonna be, right? Because we gotta agree on some level because it's important in the culture. It's important in terms of our feeling. Not only, it's interesting when I talk to folks about the fact that Black people acknowledge each other, and I talk about that in the context of Africa, right? And those of you that have read the book know that I talk about that whole idea of I see you, and that we have transmitted that throughout generations with the head nod. Hey, how you doing? The nod, right? So it's like there's no space in your life where you don't acknowledge people. People need to know that they have value, they have worth. And then I ask people, my students, my audiences, folks that I'm doing consulting work with, and I want you to think about it, those of you that are familiar with that whole idea of nodding to the perfect stranger, right? And what that feels like when someone does that. I mean, it happened yesterday when we were walking. There was an African-American man and his daughter, and she was kind of, running alongside him, but he stopped to acknowledge me and to nod. And there's just this feeling, this feeling of wholeness that you feel, a feeling of worth. I mean, it's really an interesting reality that I'm valued, I'm seen, I'm acknowledged. And so in this process of us having this social distancing, all of these things are something that I've been thinking about as a clinician, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a friend. I'm looking at some of the chats over here. We want to work with you too. I think that's Jade, and I see a bunch of different folks. We see you now. Whether or not Dr. Joyce could be able to navigate between these and talking,
I'm paying attention to the comments.
Bahia will pay attention, and I'll try really hard to respond where there are questions. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today had to do with this whole idea of what we're doing while we're inside. And I'm seeing this as an opportunity from the West African perspective, is to connect with spirit, right? And I want to roll that into something that's going on right now in my area. Live in Sacramento County. And in Sacramento County, the statistics, and my wonderful husband, he's kind of a data. He brought me this information about the fact that in Sacramento County, 1/3 of all of the cases of the coronavirus, and there were 314, and 1/3 of them came from churches, right? And one church, 24 of them came from one church. And so there's this notion again of connecting, and I want to speak to this whole idea of intimacy, about keeping that spiritual connection, whatever that is for you. Not everybody, is going to be going to a church. And one of the things that my family did, for example, we just went through our yearly annual fast, which is 19 days. And so as Baha'is, we don't eat or drink until between the hours of sunrise and sunset. We can eat before sunrise and after sunset. So for 19 days, people were fasting. And so we decided as a family, well, let's just have a prayer time at noon when everybody would normally be going to lunch. So at noon, we all, kind of would dial in and folks would, say prayers. And it was so amazing. It was so, people loved it so much, that we're trying to find another way to do classes or something, because
Right.
you just hear, and it wasn't visual. We didn't do a video, but it was just hearing people's voices.
Mhm.
It was hearing people saying prayers or reciting quotations that are important and significant to them. And that brings me back to this whole idea of intimacy, closeness, connection. Well, since we are in these environments together, and for some people, and Bahia will talk a little bit about that later, but for some people, they're in very close proximity. They're strained relationships, but here's an opportunity too. It's an opportunity to really develop more intimacy, to ask questions that maybe you never even entertained before. For example, if you have elders in your space, or you have children with parents, to tell the story of your parents, tell the story of where your parents met, tell the story of where we come from, creating your own narrative. And it's very interesting because there's so much we take for granted. But if you don't ask the questions, and those people pass away, we, like I say, I call it a library burned down. We can't access the books or the materials there. So I wanted to really speak to this whole idea of what intimacy means. So I was working with a group of young high schoolers. It was a high school program. I was, doing some work with coaching. And I said intimacy, and everybody, all the boys immediately started laughing. They just started laughing like they were just really embarrassed and just weirding out. And I looked at them, I'm like, what's wrong with you? What did I say? But intimacy for them was sexual. That's all they could connect with it. And what my goal was with them is to teach them a level of intimacy, to teach them something that I knew would touch their heart. So one of the things I did was I told a story about my son. And my oldest son has ataxic cerebral palsy. And I remember Bahia used to beat up people for making fun of him because, and you have to look up ataxic. It's a really unique form of cerebral palsy. You have spastic and athetoid, which is very, very rigid or very, very loose. He has neither of those. He's literally a pure ataxic. And what happened is, of course, as he was growing up, he didn't know he had cerebral palsy. There was nothing, he was normal from his vantage point. He was normal from my vantage point, actually, in our family. But other people that saw him, he couldn't run as fast. He talked slow. And this is, when he was very young. So when he was about 7 years old, after Bahia had beaten up a significant number of people.
It's a short woman's complex. I can't let stuff like that go. You're not about to
let it go. So she was out there brawling. She's doing better now. Okay. So what happens is one day Hassan comes in the house, and he said, "Mommy, what's wrong with me?" And I said, "What do you mean, Hassan? What's wrong with you?" He says, I can't run like the other kids can run. And he started to say all the things that the kids said about him.
Right.
And then I told him, I said, well, you have ataxic cerebral palsy, and I'm telling this story to a whole group of seniors, the majority males in this program. And I said, well, you were born with something called ataxic cerebral palsy. And he goes, so who gave that to me? Why was I born with that? I said, you were just born that way. And he said, well, why did you make me that way? Right? As a 7-year-old. And it was so difficult for me. It was heartbreaking, actually. And I said, well, I didn't give it to you, Hassan. It's how you were made. It's just part of who you are. And he said, well, then why did God make me that way?
Right.
Why would God make me this way? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped and I'm going, oh, geez, 7 years old. My heart is being ripped to shreds. And I said, you know what, Hassan? I said, God looked at me and he said, is she strong enough? And God said, no. And he looked at your sister. He says, is she strong enough? God said, no. And he looked at your dad and he said, is he strong enough? God said, no. And he said, so eyes got really big and bright. He said, so God gave this to me because I'm strong enough? I said, that's right, son. That's why God gave it to you. And he was lit up, got up, left the room excited. I cried for at least an hour. And then I realized, I looked in the room with these young boys and they were changed. Mm-hmm. They were changed because they were right there with me.
Right. It created the intimacy so they could experience.
This is intimacy. Right.
Yeah.
What I have shared with you, what has happened in this moment, what is going on in your heart, that's intimate. I've shared with you a very fragile part of me and a very real part of my son's experience and a very real thing that we walk through the world with. I said, and it makes us unique and wonderful and incredible human beings. And so in order for me to teach them about intimacy, I had to be intimate with them.
Right.
And I hope that makes sense,
experience it directly to understand it. And that will also help them know what they don't have sometimes with the sexual relationships, right? Because those aren't necessarily intimate relationships, but maybe they don't know the difference, right? And so that gave them that feeling to connect them. Yeah.
Right. And so I think the whole idea of having this, using this space, using this time to create intimacy, right. To create that as again, the West African tradition of coming and bringing together spirit. And not being afraid of that. And the reason why I brought up the example of the church, because this was a natural thing that people felt, connected to, and a huge number of coronavirus victims ended up coming from those particular churches. But the important part is we seek that spirit, and there's no reason, even though we're in these spaces, like my family did a prayer call. Not everybody's into prayer. Some people would rather meditate, and there are all kinds of things to do, but to not feel like we need to leave or lose such a critical part of who we are. We have to be more creative. And so that's part of what Bahia is going to talk about is some of that creativity. And then we'll go back to some of the other areas.
Oh, is it my turn? Okay, so nice to be here with you all. I know you came here to see Dr. Joy, so I'm really excited to be on this platform with her because I think that, she raised me to really center healing in my life purpose. So not surprisingly, then I've gone very similar route in terms of my work. But my work has primarily been with girls. And I think more recently, I was doing the family therapy stuff more recently than the research. Mom's been doing the research game for a while. But what I've been really, I run a program called the Black Parent Initiative. And we really support Black families, kind of infants through 6 years old, and trying to create a space for families. And so they've been really struggling during this time. And so Mom and I have been talking about what can we do to connect with people, to create an intimacy with folks so that they don't feel, one, that they're alone. But also, when you're stressed out, it's hard to be creative. It's hard to think and be innovative in your own space. So what tools can we share that have helped us? And how do we ease the burden in some ways so that they can actually access that creativity and create some joy and some well-being in their homes, even though there's stress around finances and food and all these things. And so I just wanted to share a couple of things that have been really working for some of our families. And that is, first, people have to figure out what is their locus of control. Like, what can you control? You can't control a lot of what's happening in the environment, but there are some things that you can control. And so my recommendation there is, one, make a list of all the things that are financial, that are family, and that are maybe creative or social outlets that you'd like to access during this time. And you think, okay, so if it's financial, okay, what are the things that I have to get done this month in order for me to thrive? It's not necessarily, focusing on, oh my God, if I give me some loan forgiveness or some, rent forgiveness for 3 months, am I going to owe 3 months back, rent in 3 months? Like, that stuff will cause you a lot of anxiety. But if you think, okay, this month, what are the resources that are available to me to help me with my rent? Do I know them? Kind of write them down. Rent, bills, activities for kids, all these things, food, all things that you have to do. And any place that you don't know where you can get a resource or some support, put a question mark. Anywhere where you know a resource is going to help you with lunch programs or rent assistance, put a star because you know that's taken care of. So the more stars that you replace those question marks with, the more relaxed you're going to become because you feel like, okay, I have some control over what I'm looking at. So you're not looking every day at, around the corner at something new happening. So that's one. Kind of make that list, and every day kind of go to the list and see what you can check off. And if you don't know where the resources are, think about a list of people who you might think that they know where the resources are, because then you can say, oh, I need to call this person, or I need to ask this person to call their mom who works down there. These are the types of things that you start to put on that list, and that will help you kind of deal with your stress in that way. Then when you talk about family, this is a part where people with small children are pulling their hair out because they're just like, they never get a break. They don't get a school break. They don't get lunch break. A lot of our families we're seeing, honestly, domestic violence cases, child abuse cases, all those things can be, increasing when you're in close quarters and you're stressed out. And if your space is cluttered, if it doesn't feel very organized, it's even more overwhelming. If it's dark, these are all things that contribute to a sense of like, I'm trapped. But there are some things that you could really, do to create some joy in your home, even when you don't have a lot of resources. And so one of the things I did with one of our families is the family had a very small apartment, and we used tape to section off a little square that was the quiet special zone, right? So whenever mom was sitting in the special zone, not to bother her, she's in the special zone. And in that place, you can practice breathing, you can close your eyes, and everybody kind of knows that. And the children will at some point want to start using and accessing that special space just because it's kind of an off-limit space in that place. You can think about sitting with your children and practicing mindful meditation. It sounds like very woo-woo, but really it's something easy. If you have them, my mom used to do this to help us process, right? So you close your eyes, you have the children tell you, what's in your room. Tell me all the things in your room, or what's downstairs, or what's in the living room, or what's in the closet. It doesn't matter how big the space is. What are all the things that you can think of that you see when you close your eyes in your kitchen, and you just have them practicing? Oh, I think we have a can opener, or there's a toaster on the counter, or whatever those things are. Just having them go through those things and rewarding them and clapping for them after the fact. And that's from a little kid to a teenager. Just having them have it as centered themselves. The other thing you can do is,
remember, Naima did the guided meditation.
Guided meditations, right? We light a little candle and you breathe, but nobody can breathe so hard to make the candle go out. And so everyone's but it makes everyone sit still and be engaged in the practice. And it was really amazing what that does for the whole vibe of the house when people have to sit and breathe towards a candle. So there's that. There's little mini projects that you can do. A lot of people are like, I don't have a lot of supplies. I used to be happy with a cardboard box. That was one of my favorite things as a kid, or a couple of playing cards.
I gave her more than boxes. She didn't grow up with just boxes.
Well, I'm saying, the 3 cards, right. I had 3. I used to like to play with 3 cards, and I was very happy. I would turn them over and then turn them back over. And then this lady seeking to improve the situation dumps a whole thing of cards and freaks me out. That's too much. I was managing my 3 cards just fine. So anyway, but little things that you can do. And I am thinking a lot about, the fact that we're even on live with you all. Everybody who's on this live is privileged because you have access to a Wi-Fi or internet. You have a phone or a smartphone or a computer or a laptop or iPad. So even the folks who have access here are privileged compared to a lot of folks in the community who are feeling shut off. So sometimes, a lot of our clients, their phones are cut off. So we're trying to figure out, okay, if we got to communicate with them, we got to go and knock on the door, get socially distant, tell them what we need, walk on the other side of the street while they interact with their kids. There are things that we have to do creatively to touch folks who don't have access and to let them know that they're not forgotten. So really this whole thing for me has just been really around telling people that you're not by yourself. And sometimes when you can alleviate the stress on that list, you can access the creativity to be present with your kids or your husband or your family or your sisters, whoever's in your house. And if you're by yourself, what are some things that I never have time to do that now I actually could do? I tell people you can make an herbal steam sauna. If you don't have a tub, you can take a bath. But if you don't have a bathtub, because everybody doesn't, you can order off. If you can order off Amazon, if you can't order off Amazon, the next time you go to the grocery store, you can get some fresh mint at the grocery store. It's not that expensive. It's a couple dollars maybe. And you can take it and you can cook it in get a teapot, steep it, and put that little cup of mint water in the corner of your shower, and then get the shower, get really, really hot before you get in there and get all the nice mint vapors. You can do that with lavender. You feel like you've had just a very botanical experience when you do that. Or if you have a tub, there's all kinds of recipes that you can look up for making bath bombs or, things that you can do together with your family to be creative, cooking together. If you have if you don't have access to a recipe, you could go around the neighborhood and literally leave a recipe on the door and ask them to leave one for you. And everyone practices with what they have in their house, trying to make a new recipe. So that's just the tips that I wanted to give folks. Back to you, Joy.
Thank you. So, and I see a lot of, oh my goodness, a lot of people were talking about their experiences and wanting to be able to talk about that. I'm trying to, I'm not good at this. I'm learning. So, but here, maybe you could read them while I'm talking. I'm going to try to touch on some of those things. I have the real bounty of having an online course, and my students have had an opportunity to apply some of the materials and the models that I've written and developed. And then they've been able to feed back to me about improvement and what's happened, which is so exciting in terms of seeing change happen and also being able to stand up for yourself. And at this time when people, and I know there are folks who've lost their jobs, there are people who are, it's just a stressful condition, right? And so what I'm trying to do with people, and I like what I did in my class, is to help people identify something that they can solve in short order. So in other words, we can't fix everything. We can, this is the time, but there's some things that we can start working on. Things that we're working on in ourselves, things that we're working on. If we do have a job, if we don't have a job, well, we can use this period of time to start thinking creatively. I was just talking to my stepson, and one of the things that he does, he has a degree in I think botanical or agriculture, something to do with plants, right? He's got a bachelor's degree. And, he's has his own little business. There was a food truck that he has. And of course, he's out of work. But I said to him, I said, one of the things that I do, and everybody knows, if you go on my Facebook, I have, moments where I'm teaching people how to garden. I'm teaching people how to grow food. Yes. And right now, that means a whole lot, right? Yeah. I have a garden every year, so it's not something new to me. I don't have a huge garden. I don't have a huge space. I've also had gardens in boxes. So I was saying to him how useful his knowledge would be right now,
right.
online, to do a blog and say, let's all start gardens. Let's all look at how to grow herbs in a box. Let's look at what we need. What's the cheapest way to do it? Where do we get seeds? Can we share seeds? And he was, I was saying to him, it's a valuable knowledge base, and he is amazing. I mean, he saved all my plants that are dead or dying in my house, helped me with my garden, and understanding what was needed, but not a lot. I mean, and so he was going, wow, he hadn't thought about that he has an expertise that, you can have people help you with, and maybe you could do a blog and people could contribute 50 cents. I don't know. But, something where all of us have to start thinking more creatively, having that plan B right about now, because we're just a couple weeks into this. Some people haven't even started. They haven't even started the social distancing. There's some.
That's why I saw that meme that said, raise your hand if you think this is going to be, completed in 2 weeks, and then use that hand to slap yourself.
exactly, right? And you certainly can't listen.
Okay, wait, there's a couple questions I want you to go to.
Okay, all right.
So it looks like Xenia, I think her name is Bembe. I'm sorry if I've messed it up, but Xenia, she says, Dr. Joy, what do you think are the unique challenges for those of us who are the descendants of the enslaved and during this COVID-19 period? So unique challenges for us.
I think the unique challenges have to do with having lived and grown in environments that are hostile towards us anyway, right? So we deal with a layer of distancing, discrimination that is every day. And now we've pushed that even further. Now, matter of fact, there's some people that are thrilled to death that they can have to be distant. They're thrilled to death. And I think it poses a unique problem for us because it is our natural desire to connect. But what I want to say about that, there's a wonderful book. I'm reading several books now. Now I have time to read them. One of them is called.
Is it good reading? Because you know you like to watch horrible. You like to read horrible stuff.
I don't have
for leisure activities. I'm like, who is reading that on purpose?
I heard something go off. Okay, look, I'm gonna get concerned when I hear things going off.
No, it was my alarm.
So this book is called Dying of Whiteness, right? And what's really great about this book, it's by Jonathan Metzl, who's, as a physician and as someone who's looking at what's going on. So you have folks that have actually parlayed this moment in particular into another way to really increase their racial distancing. So you have such resentment, and this book speaks about the whole idea that because of racial resentment, white supremacy, just really real ignorance on so many levels in terms of how white people who have no experience with Black people, how they perceive us. So much so that they have done things that are detrimental to their own health. That's hence dying white. So you have white people that, voted against, gun laws, that, voted out the Affordable Care Act, cut schools and social services and all of these things, which ultimately resulted in more deaths of white people, right? The racism was the overarching thing that moved that way. So I think what we have to do, and what we have to use this opportunity to do, is while we are social distancing for obviously health reasons, we're also going to start connecting in a different way. We can begin to insist upon that connection on a lot of different levels, even with my neighbors that, we aren't in close proximity, but we talk and we can wave and we can engage, but to not let people rob you of your reality, rob you of what's important in your life. And at the same time, I think it poses a special problem with children. I mean, someone was talking to me about, it was my son who was talking about his children who wanted to play with the neighbor kids, right? And so there's this pensive kind of thing because they don't understand. They just want to play because they're kids. And then there's this how do you manage that? And I think children are extremely resilient when we're able to be very real with them and to give them room to say, okay, you may not be able, to go and play with them and play jacks, or they don't play jacks anymore.
Jacks.
Did I just age my?
I mean, now they can learn jacks. They can learn jacks right now, but yeah,
they can learn that.
They're talking about the can.
I'm trying to figure out something that you could touch, right? So, but they could take turns doing other kind of things, drawing to hopscotch. People play hopscotch. There are things that you can do, but if parents respond in a way that's inauthentic, that frightens children. It frightens everyone, actually. So I say that the specific is, again, moving us away from what is our natural propensity, and at the same time having to be creative about really retaining that sense of our own authentic cultural selves.
Okay, so I have another one. Well, it's not really a question, but I think it's something we should try to address. And that is, someone said, this is very needed because I lost my job because of the pandemic, and this is so stressful. I now watch my young grandchildren because so their parents can work, and I still have not recovered from the financial hardship that I suffered from the job that I lost 5 years ago. So I live in a much smaller quarters. I can't get in contact with the unemployment department because the phones are flooded. The online application is not allowing me to complete the application. I have no room to work out like I normally do. If I could go outside, it's a mess. So the reason why I wanted to bring that comment up is because that is, I mean, what a lot of people are experiencing right now. Mm-hmm. And so even in that, and I would just say this, and I'm going to let you respond, but even responding to, first of all, acknowledging that how difficult that must be. I think that we sometimes gloss over the fact this is somebody's actual lived experience. We can't just say, oh, you'll be okay. We have to think about first the weight of that and all of those changes that have happened to you. First, I want to just tell you, I'm really sorry that you've experienced all of those things. And I know it must be really, really, really tough. But the fact that you're still here and you're able to connect means that you have something in you that you're going to be able to give to those grandchildren, that you're going to be able to get through this period of time because there's something that you have about you that even allowed you to be here with us today. So that's one. And two, thinking about the fact that it's time to be creative. I'm teaching an Afrofusion class online, Zoom, tomorrow at 5 p.m. because I used to teach a class every Tuesday night, a free class for the community. And I want my community to still be able to move. So if you have a phone or a computer, you can prop it up, watch it. No one has to see you dancing. You can just dance along with me. But there are ways that we can find ways to connect. My daughter and I have been running/walking a 5K every day. It's 3.11 miles. And we do it every day because she needs to get that fresh air in her lungs, right? It's just our neighborhood. We do it at night when everybody's not out. And it's allowing us to we never did that before. So I just want to encourage you that, one, I know it's really a struggle. I'm not minimizing your experience at all. There's always something you can do to take care of what's happening to you internally. You can't control everything that's happening out in the environment, but you can do some things to help center yourself. I don't know what you want to add.
Thanks, B. That was nice. I think that really is important. Like my husband, he used to work out every 3 days a week at least, and they closed the gym, so he's had to get creative. And of course, now I'm as involved as he is. So we go bike riding regularly. We go walking. We have light weights in the house. And if you don't have weights, you can actually get 2 jugs, fill them with water, and you can use those as weights. I mean, all
that's a lot. Jugs.
I'm saying like milk things.
How about some water bottles?
Water
jug.
Jug.
What kind of lifting you want people to be?
Right here, it's trifling. We're gonna pass by it. Okay. So anyway, there are things that you could use even if you don't have the weights. Was my point. And the other thing about jobs, first of all, does anyone know? I guess I don't use LinkedIn right because I got so many people LinkedIn to me. I'm a like sometimes people from all over the world, they're LinkedIn with me. I'm going, yeah, I got to remember that person. He's a geneticist. I got to remember her. Does floor work, and puts floor in. And I'm looking at all these different people, but there are folks that offer assistance, people that are looking for people to work for them. We have to get creative about what we can do. I remember, I've had so many jobs throughout my life. Literally, I was doing street outreach and working with adolescent and adult male and female night workers. So prostitution for 5 years. I was, working with folks. I wasn't working with them. Don't start rumors now. I wasn't working with them. Not in a biblical way.
Working alongside them.
No, I wasn't even alongside them. That's not what I was doing. Anyway, I've had a lot of different jobs. I have no regrets. I have no shame in anything that I've done. I've done janitorial work. I've worked at burger joints. You do what you have to do. You do what you have to do, and there's no shame in any of that. Yeah. And I think that especially as elders, it becomes harder. Recently somebody, I guess it's been in the last, when I turned 60, I'm 62 now. When I turned 60, I remember walking up, I think I was going into a theater and I was, going to see a movie and the girl asked, she goes, would you like the senior discount? And I was like, what? What? And then I thought about it. Yeah, well, this in your discount.
But see, this is the thing. The frugality of you is what made you feel better about you can be offended about being old because you were like, is it going to be cheaper?
Exactly. I mean, I want my bus pass. I want my little breakfast thing. Everything. I'm serious. I've earned it. But the bottom line is, I didn't see myself. I mean, most of us that you think about yourself, I don't feel any differently than when I was, in my 20s. I'm different. I look in the mirror. That's real clear. But I also have to recognize that other people see me differently. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's that adjustment that's just difficult altogether. But very often people look at elders and they don't consider, the wisdom, and we know that now everybody's 60 and over that's looking at this, that's, you can remember now looking at your kids, looking at young people. And I remember someone that really, really said that, they just really encouraged me and really thought a lot of me and really always was looking out for me. And I remember that point in my life where I just really felt like, I could do anything, and the other part of that is, can't nobody tell me what to do, right? That was the problem part. But it was a point at which I was humbled.
Yeah.
And now as an older person, I can meet people pre and post humbling.
Yes.
It's an important stage in your development. It's I look at people and I go, this young man, he's got charisma, he's bright, he's capable, and as soon as he has that humbling, he's going to be doing great work.
Well, and the humbling is what allows you to be self-reflective.
Right.
See, I know for me, they used to call me the voice of reason in college. That was my nickname because I thought I'm always making the right decision. Wrong, right? It's very clear. And because I thought that I was really making right decisions all the time, I was very judgmental of other people who I felt were not always making the right decisions. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. This is right. This is wrong. Until you have a humbling experience and you're like, I have no room to talk about other people. And then you're actually much more approachable, and you can also brainstorm with people how to work things, but you don't have that self-reflection until you get humbled. Okay, a couple more questions.
Okay.
Over here. So
I have to say something. Cynthia Johnson, I don't remember you getting on my nerves in Minnesota. Hi, Albie. I see you. Hello, Rita. I got to say this to people, and I know my cousin is supposed to be on. I don't see him writing anything. But I know my cousin is on. I want to give a shout out to him. He's in Kansas City, I think. Okay. Wherever he is.
So, all right. So really quickly, so people were liking some of the. What did you say?
Eddie. That's my cousin. I don't see you, Eddie, so I gave you a shout out. I don't see you.
Okay. So people are liking the ideas of keeping things going around the self-care, the meditation, breathing stuff, the mindfulness. That's good. So we're going to keep that going. Cynthia says hi to us. Cynthia Barnes. Also, want to talk about that Lakeitha mentioned that one of the doctors who lives here, Alicia, I think that's what she said, Moreland. I think that's who she was naming. But anyway, she was saying that there was someone here she was talking to that was saying that we should talk about, Alicia Moreland, I think that's not her last name. But anyway, encouraged us to use the language physical distancing versus social distancing, because we can find ways to still be social without sharing the same physical space. So thank you, Lakeitha, for sharing that.
Excellent idea. Physical.
Somebody mentioned a jar of marbles because you were talking about jacks. See that?
Hey, I used to play jacks, and I used to shoot marbles too.
Okay, shooting marbles. Okay, so
brown object on the dirt. I'm just saying.
I know. Okay, so Kish Yoon, I don't know if I'm saying your last name right, but they said, can you encourage those with folks who have people incarcerated to keep in touch with them during this time? You can at least write them. That she works in, or she or he, I'm not sure, works in jail, and they said they're really feeling uniquely alone because jails are closed. They can't get visitors.
Right.
And so I think that that's really important to not leave those people out.
Absolutely. In fact, I did a lot of work. I've done a lot of work in prisons and still do. And so I think it's important. One of the things that you could do, which is a really great thing, is to read books together. You know, get a book that, of course, they have access to. And I don't know what it is anymore, but I know they rejected my book forever. But now it's in paperback. That was part of it. And the other part was they said it was just too controversial or stirred them up or whatever. Anyway, and folks got the book, but not necessarily my book, but things that are really important about self-care, about relationships, anything. And read those books and share back and forth in letters or however you can connect what you got, what you learned, what you gleaned from you know what you've been picking up from this literature, whatever it is, you know. And I'm really big on that. I've always been a person excited about learning new stuff. I mean, work your brain. If your brain's a muscle, you need to work it. Do something different. You know, it's the same thing. Bahia just gave me a recipe for a whole Greek meal.
Moroccan.
Wonderful. Moroccan, sorry. But I was Greek seasoning. That was the issue. Anyway, so it was really a different taste, different flavor that we can share, you know. And so I think there's lots you can share. And especially when folks are in that institution, to kind of talk a little bit about maybe some things even that are coming out that they may or may not be aware of around incarceration and what we're learning about that. So yeah, I totally get that, totally understand it. I've had friends and loved ones that have been incarcerated, so I'm no stranger to that. And just literally any contact means a whole lot and goes a long way.
And they also have, I know that I have someone that I am connected to who is in jail. I won't name the name, but we do video chats periodically. And so if they have the ability at the jail that you're in to find out if they have video chats, they're usually really short, like 30-minute increments, but you can connect through video chat. And sending books or inspirational, you know, poetry, short stories, always really good. Somebody was just mentioned, V.D. Wesley said Chicago had 20 shootings while on shelter in place. These are young Black men. Any suggestions on how to reach them while we're in this? Because that's the other part of the axiology, right? Yeah.
And I think part of it, and I've spoken about this before, and that's that whole idea of how we've become estranged from young people, going back to the whole idea of intimacy that, you know, comes is a very natural part of our culture. If you go to any, even very, very poor countries in Africa, you just really, that whole sense of respect and the familial kind of response and engagement around folks, but we've become estranged in our own homes from our own children, our own family. I can't tell you how many times people have had to say to their kids, say hello. Dr. Joy is say hello, because they're so used to not engaging with anybody, right? And so the only way that changes is if we change. Now, do understand that there's reciprocity that goes back and forth. There's so many things, so many layers. I talked about the whole idea of the importance of dads and fathers, and statistically how important it is to have males and have men in our worlds. But there's also moments, and we've all had them in our experience, where, you know, somebody's kind of losing their mind and don't want to, you know, actually live by the rules. And I'm going to tell this story, which really kind of sometimes illustrates to what lengths we have to go. And we've done this with members of our family, you know, because we can save you from yourself sometimes. So you have an adolescent or a young male that's not behaving right? So there's this story, and the story is about a king. And the king has all of these people that work for him, his servants that do things, and he's getting ready to go on a ship, a trip across, you know, the sea somewhere. And the specific servant, this one servant, started falling apart, freaking out, hollering, screaming, I don't want to get on it. I want to get on the boat. I want to do it. And so, you know, going back and forth saying, yes, you got to, no, I'm not. And this man was standing nearby said, you know, I can help you with this problem with, you know, this employee, this servant of yours. He says, please. So I'll give you your weight in silver or whatever. And so he gets on the boat, forces the servant guy on the boat. He screams and hollers and cries. The man then throws him off the boat, throws him into the water. So now he's drowning, right? So he goes down, he comes up, he goes down, and the third time he goes down, he reaches over and grabs him. They pull him up, put him on a boat. Gets a little blanket around him, sits in the corner, quiet as a church mouse. And he said, wow, he said, my goodness. He says, what he needed to learn was the value of the boat.
Indeed.
And you learn the value of the boat when your behind gets thrown in the water. Okay. Now, I'm not suggesting you drown your children. Don't get me, let's not get this wrong. But sometimes our children don't understand the value of a home, of a relationship, of a parent, of a friend, someone that's there with you. They don't know the value of it.
Right.
They've never been in the water. And sometimes you got to put them in the water. Okay. Sometimes you got to go, okay, you don't understand the value of the boat. So we're going to go send you to Arkansas to stay with your uncle on the farm. Okay. Right. You're going to farm with your uncle for a while. Right. Exactly. So they learn the value of what you had. Now, all of us don't have the ability to do that. It may not have to be in Arkansas. It may be something very different. But I think part of those issues that we're seeing is because we're not establishing those relationships, those healthy relationships within our environment. And that means that we got to show up for this too. We got to lean in because we make mistakes as parents, as adults, as elders. We all still make mistakes. The issue is if we don't learn from them.
So quick question. So Jasmine Taylor, Sida's niece.
Yeah.
Who's on here? Do you know that it's her birthday today?
Well, happy birthday.
Yes, Jasmine, we want to give you a little shout out. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Speaking of essential connections, I've been thinking about, I listed my Zoom information on there if people want to join our little free Afrofusion class. I only have the free Zoom, so I don't know how many people it's going to let me have on there.
I want to also talk about your business here because I think it's really important for you to talk about. Again, everybody got a side hustle. Everybody got a side hustle. So I want you to talk a little bit about yours and why it's important and where it came from. And then I'm going to probably close out talking about the importance of empathy.
Yes. Well, first, I think empathy is key. One of the things that we're doing right now, Mom/Dr. Joy, and her class right now is, she's using her model, which is a relationship-based model to work with communities of color, but really in particular, Black children and families. And the reason why it's so effective is partially because she's using protocols and the philosophy that are aligned with us culturally. But what we're trying to do now is we're moving it into implementation and evaluation to know that you're making the improvements you need to be making. And what has never really been centered with us when people are working with us is the community voice and expertise in making changes that it needs to have in the community. So empathy is really where we start. All of the inventions you see out here, majority of them came from someone struggling with something and wanting to make an improvement for somebody, either themselves or someone they care about. And so if you're thinking about right now, side hustles are essential. My side hustle, I have a business called Bahia Honey, Beauty and Wellbeing. Now, I went to a whole lot of schooling. I'm finishing my PhD, did not do any of that to become a lotion mogul. However, my daughter was born with eczema, and wanting to be able to support your child when they are super irritated and you don't want to put parabens and bad stuff on them, I just started trying stuff. It took me about a year, and I came up with something that has gone on to help a lot of people. So, I think when you think about a side hustle, think about what it is that you see is absent in your community and what could make a difference, and find ways. Like I was thinking about, like recipes, positive notes, meditations, herbal complexes. There's all kinds of things that you might be able to do just with what you have. What do you really know a lot about? Are you a great singer? Can you do music therapy with some of your neighbors' kids one-on-one? Can you do singing lessons? Can you do a stretching class? People can cash app you or, drop off a little envelope of money for you. There's so many ways to incorporate yourself in, and also at the same time where you're having a side hustle, to be supporting your community. You're giving them something they actually need. My daughter's eczema bothered me. It was like ashy spots and she was scratching her skin, but it wasn't nearly as bad as the people who come to my page and come to my business to get the lotion from me. Their eczema is horrible. So you see something that I created out of my empathy for my daughter, a very mild case, turned into something that has been super. I mean, the testimonials I get from people about how it's helped them. That is why it's like, wow, that inspiration that came from someone I cared about helped other people. Think about those things that you can. What is it as a need that I see that people have? I have a lot of expertise on that. Somebody said that they use a lot of botanicals and essential oils for things. Maybe they know a lot about essential oils. Can you do a workshop for $5 and people can on your video, or send it, record it on your phone and forward it to your friends? They can cash at me $5 because you're trying to give people something that you know. So
how about while you pull up your, are you gonna pull up the pictures?
Oh, okay, I'll pull up some pictures. But also, like my friend right now, my friend just came up with designer fast face masks. So if you want to go to Etsy and look at Little KMD, that's my friend Kelly Marie Dunn. She created a face mask that's designer that you wear over your COVID mask. So I just ordered 3 of them for her yesterday because she makes clothing for kids, but she's like, hey, respond to the needs of today. So there are a lot of things that we can do that will, get us excited about, something that we're creative, notes. Even if somebody has really good handwriting, offer to, dictate notes for folks and send them out. There's a lot of things. My cousin does beautiful calligraphy. She could, those are just things that I'm constantly thinking about that can, or hand painted T-shirts or anything you have that you think is unique. Design people's shoes for them or make some jewelry. There's a lot of tutorials online. So, okay.
I wanted, while she is pulling up the picture, I wanted to just say, someone asked me about Gail and Snoop. Interestingly enough, I was actually asked to be part of the Red Table
Talk. Yeah, they called her to try to address the issue on Red Table.
The issue that I have, one, I totally hear, understand all the sides of this. It was the timing that was just wrong. Didn't matter what position you had, folks weren't in the ground yet. So just think about yourself, right? And I'm going, all of the very, very relevant issues on both sides of this, very, very relevant, cannot be trivialized, but the time is not when somebody's trying to bury their baby. That's not, right. I'm not going to engage there because it's disrespectful. I would engage a little further down the line somewhere else, but not then. And I think sometimes there's a wonderful quotation I use from a scripture that says, not everything that a man knoweth can be disclosed. Not everything that is disclosed can be considered as timely, and not every timely utterance suited to the capacity of those who hear it.
Exactly.
So sometimes the issue is timing, sometimes it's capacity. And we have to pay attention to those kind of things, more importantly. And again, there are a lot of people that feel very strongly about a lot of stuff. And I do too. But there are things that I don't talk about. There are things that I can't share it in a way that it wouldn't cause harm. So right. I put that goes somewhere else because I'm very committed to doing things that are helpful for folks. And I wanted to, did you find the picture to be?
Yeah, let me see if I can share the screen, see if people can see this. All right, we're gonna attempt. We'll see if it's itty bitty. We were having an issue yesterday and it was all super itty bitty. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can make it work. No, last time, this is what happened last time. I don't know.
If it doesn't work, we're gonna have to move on.
Yeah, I'll try it one last time, and if it doesn't work, then you know what it is? I'll download it as a picture. Keep talking. I'll find it as a picture.
Okay. So I was just looking at, someone asked me about coming to the Czech Republic. That's like the third person that talked to me about the Czech Republic. When this is all over with, whenever that is. Sure, I'm mobile. I don't have a job right now.
Well, once you're cleared for travel.
Once I'm clear to travel. But yeah, no. I mean, I'm definitely one of those people that my husband's retiring. So, hey, I'd love to come. I want to go anywhere I can in the world while I'm still able to go anywhere. Of course, I probably would have to work a little bit more because, I'm not working really a whole lot now.
Right.
I wanted to, the last thing that I wanted to share, did you figure it out? No?
Keep going.
Going. No.
Okay. You keep going, but I got it.
Like I told you, I was reading a couple of books. Everybody always tells me this book is too thick and too heavy to be talking about, but I just so love this thing that I learned. Okay, so I'm gonna say about 20 years ago, I was noticing some behaviors in preschoolers. I was working with pre-K teachers, doing some coaching with them, and there was this kid. There's a video of a little kid. Everybody's, nobody's over 3. They're 3-year-olds, right? And this little boy had stabbed a little girl in the face with a pencil and took whatever it was, a crayon, toy, whatever she had, he took it. And they show this video. Blood is, spraying out of this kid's face. She's screaming. She drops the toy. The kid picks it up. Absolutely no response other than she had the toy. She wouldn't give it to me. I stabbed her in the face and I got the toy now. There was no empathy. And I remember that. And I was going, this is not right. I remember when I was a little kid, and even when I talk to little kids now, they're sorry about another kid that gets hurt. There's a natural sense of empathy. That's what I'm used to. That's what I grew up with. But here, this child, and the child wasn't on the spectrum, wasn't autistic. And these teachers were saying to me they were seeing more and more of this. Now, this was about 15 years ago. And I was really curious about that because later on, people started talking about autism and it being a spectrum disorder and all of that. But it still there's certain things that didn't make sense to me until I read this book, and I haven't finished reading it, which is called The Master and His Emissary. It is very thick. Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a thick book, but this man, and you can go online and look him up and see some of his videos, which may be easier to read than reading the book, which is a tough read, but it's a really great read. And I wanted to share one part of that, something that he wrote that really touched me and made me start thinking about it. I'm going to read it. It's not long. He says, finally, it would appear to be a literal truth that as a society, we are becoming more like individuals with right hemisphere deficits. What he's meaning is a right hemisphere of the brain. He says, we seem like we're people who have a deficit with that part of the brain. Anecdotal evidence from the teaching profession suggests that between 1/4 and 1/3 of children aged as old as 5 to 7 are now having to be taught how to read the human face. Something that until recently would have been necessary only in the case of children with autism. And about 1/3 of all children now have difficulty carrying out tasks that a decade ago, virtually every child in a mainstream school would have been able to easily do. Tasks that depend on sustained attention. Added to that, research suggesting that young people today are less empathetic than children 30 to 40 years ago. A neuropsychologist, which he is, had to choose 3 things to characterize most clearly the functional contribution of the right hemisphere. They most probably would be able to look at the capacity to read the human face, the capacity to sustain vigilant attention, and the capacity to empathize. Now, in this book, it says The Master and the Emissary, the divided brain in the making of the Western world. And part of what he's talking about here is the fact that as we look at civilizations, as civilizations begin to decay, and every civilization has a rise and a fall. It has a peak and a fall. And you have to ask yourself where we are, however young, in this civilization. And he's saying that we are so left brain, so mechanistic, so into technology that we have not understood the importance of compassion, the idea of a collective working together as opposed to competition. And what I like about this book and what I like about it is as I began this conversation about spirit, Now we get understanding from various branches. This is a pure science perspective. It's not looking at a spiritual, religious, none of those things. But we all know how important virtue is: patience, kindness, forgiveness, mercy, justice. These are virtues that we all recognize and understand how important they are. But we're in a society that more and more is becoming alienated from those central principles, which have been largely relegated to right brain. And what I'm saying here is we have to, all of us that are at home, all of us that are practicing that physical distancing, we have to start looking at what we can do to encourage and increase our humanity, if you will. So I think, these are things, and I'm always reading different things. I'm always loving when people arrive at the same conclusion from very, very different places. And that's what good research does. Good research says, I want to look at this from a lot of different lenses so that I can learn and understand on a much broader level what I'm looking at here. And we need to be paying attention to what we're looking at here. We need to be paying attention to the fact that we have children that can't be still, that should be able to be still. Right. We have, folks, and this goes on beyond childhood, and it impacts us as adults as well. And again, in this conversation, not at all talking about trauma, while trauma is a huge part of why we're seeing so much killing within the community. Right. Some people are calling that victim perpetuated suicide. So we might really be looking at depression as opposed to the whole idea of aggression purely or sociopathic behavior. We're looking at people who can't find real good reasons to be alive. So if I can't find a good reason to be alive, why should I consider your life?
So, yes. So really quickly, we're staying in the same theme in terms of the virtues and having empathy and creating opportunities for your children to experience empathy. I think, sometimes even having children read stories about children who've had something happen, nothing too graphic or, traumatizing in nature, but really to help them say, how would you feel if that happened to you? What would you do? That's age appropriate. How would you deal with that? Or even stories from your own childhood that aren't gruesome, that are just like, gosh, how do you think I felt when that happened? Because they have compassion for you because you're their parent. And you were a little kid and somebody was mean to you. They didn't like how you looked. They didn't like what you were wearing. And how did you feel about that? It's an awesome way to connect with them. I'm going to show you a couple pictures. I did figure out how to do it. So this picture, can you see this picture? Can you see it, Mom?
Yep.
Okay. We actually, this picture right here, this woman I don't know was decided to try my product. And she's a person who does I guess a lot of before and afters. I don't know. But she posted this and we got like 8,000 views. And then I got like all these crazy orders because, again, her experience was she wanted to post the before and afters. Now, again, my daughter's eczema was not at all as bad as this baby's at all. And I didn't go into this business to try to make a lot of money. But the fact that it was helping people, this woman sent me her picture. Let me see this one. Get rid of this one. This picture of this little baby. And you have to understand, I don't know these people. They just send me their stuff. So, I have, this poor little baby. And then the last one I'm going to show you. And it's funny because when people find something that they really like, they will promote you. This woman sent me this one and was showing me the process of how it was helping her daughter. So I think that what I want to encourage people to think about is the fact that you don't have to try to think about a huge money-making idea. You have to think about how you're going to do something that will enrich the lives of someone else. And usually anything that you're inspired to do that helps other people will be successful. And so, but it comes from the place where it comes from is not the desire to get rich quick and not even necessarily the desire to survive. It really comes from the desire. What is it that there's a need that I need to fill? Like the guy who makes those soft grip, the guy who created the soft grip tools for kitchen utensils, he made those because his wife, who loved to cook, stopped cooking because of her arthritis. And so he thought, how can I make her able to cook efficiently? And so now we all benefit from those soft grip handles. I don't know why we ever had hard grip handles, but we all benefited from him creating soft grip handles because he had compassion for his wife. He had empathy for her. He thought about what she might need. And so I think that in this time of disarray, is giving us an opportunity to self-reflect on what would make our lives better and easier, and thinking about how that might help other people. I know they're doing this thing where you can adopt elders who are in, or foster children who are in like group homes, or folks who are in, adult daycare facilities, to like be able to communicate with them so they're not feeling so isolated. Buddy systems. Google Classroom for a lot of the schools are for people, again, who have the privilege of having access to the internet, being able to connect with their other fellow students. People are screaming happy birthday to kids across the street. So there's ways that we can, like Lakeitha said, physical distance, but not social distance, and thinking empathetically how you can make it a change in your neighborhood or in your apartment building or wherever else is super important right now. Let me see.
Several recommendations. As an early childhood educator, this is Linda Luxian. I often recommend the Whole Brain Child. I'm familiar with that. And No Drama Discipline, to help understand how the brain develops and helps us as parents and educators to develop empathy and compassion in children. Both books are written by Dr. Daniel Siegel, MD, and Payne Bryson. And again, always, I suggested reading list that's on my website. Of course, it's very heavily weighted towards my research, but there's some really good things in there. And one of them has to do with building children's brains. But I think that, again, I want to say something here about men. And maybe my next session I'm going to have with a male, and we'll talk about, because I think it's really, really important for us to understand that we don't live in these real silos. We live together. I think men have a unique experience in terms of how they manage through processes like this. Having read a lot of narratives, slave narratives, even looking through Jim Crow, how Black men and boys would fare through those times when they are not able to take care of their families in a way that they had hoped. How do we, again, keep that sense of our place and our roles in the society, and how important it is to reach out to everyone, not just girls, but boys and men and elders and children and young people. That's what community is. And what I'm suggesting is we need to create virtual community, which is what this is. This is a virtual community, and as we get better at it, we start realizing that we're not all that different. I mean, we just aren't. We're human beings trying to figure out how to navigate. And the hope is, again, the hope that I see when something like this happens, a crisis of this magnitude, is it's an opportunity to see if humanity's going to get it.
Right.
Are we going to figure out what is it going to take for us to recognize that we're one world?
Right.
We're a humanity, that I can't just not care about how folks are living over there. Again, Chief Seattle said, you spit upon the earth, you spit upon yourself. And that we are connected. All of these elements, all of these things, the air around us, the earth beneath our feet. And most certainly, even though we don't speak the same language, we feel our humanity. And we've got to do that. And somehow I think nature is telling us to wake up. Everything is telling us, wake up. This is where we are. And if we want to continue, we've got to focus. I think my husband's turned on the light.
Yeah, we've gone over our hour time, but
this is wonderful. And
this space is going to be every week now that we figured it out.
Yeah,
every Wednesday to support wellness. Wellness Wednesday, Be the Healing with Dr. Joy.
Exactly. And I want to get some young people on. I want to children. I just really think it's really important for us to hear the voices of people from various, spaces in their lives.
Okay, someone wants us to give a shout out to the People's Institute in New Orleans. Good work that they're doing in New Orleans, the People's Institute. Yeah, and then really quick, I don't know. Arnita was saying she wanted to know what page. I don't know what page you're talking about, Arnita. Can you write in what page you were asking her to refer to? Okay, she's gonna tell me in a second, hopefully. Yeah, this is so fun. If you have some burning questions, it's so crazy because Dr. Joy does not. I'll just say this right now. Check her Facebook messages. So anyone who feels disrespected or disregarded, please know she doesn't look at them. She doesn't look at them. So I will try to go in there and see, but there's so many. I don't want you to feel neglected because she doesn't respond to anybody because she doesn't look at them. I don't think she manages this page. So there you go. But she does post things here periodically, but she doesn't manage the page. In the book she was reading, you're highlighting a chapter in the book you're reading.
Oh.
Okay. She wants to know what page in the book. Oh, 5:30 Pacific time on the West Coast. That's the time we're going to do this. 5:30.
Actually, that statement is in the preface. That statement, he kind of starts the book with it.
Which book is that? The Master and His Emissary? Which book is that?
Master and His Emissary.
Master and His Emissary. Yeah. So that's the book.
Other book is Dying of Whiteness, which is also a really good book.
Oh yeah, Dying of Whiteness. Good book. Yeah. Also think about what we've been thinking about, interesting topics of conversation, book clubs. Also, Netflix clubs. There's all kinds of interesting series going on. So we can find ways to connect around things that people are doing. To thank you. Okay, that answered Arnita's question. I don't know. I'm very grateful for everybody who's joined this community. I mean, this is a community that supports wellness. We have some essential folks there who are now trying to figure out how to take care of themselves. You have to kind of care for the caregiver. So I would encourage you not only to support the people who are, that you're helping, but the folks who are working with the people who are helping need to make sure that they're taking care of themselves too. A friend of ours who's a medical intuitive was saying that people are feeling back pain, and it really has to do with your adrenal gland being activated by the stress. So just drinking lots of water and taking vitamins can help you with that also. So just, we need you out there. We need you healthy. So hopefully this space can be a place of release, right? And people can feel connected to.
Yeah. I'm touring my house.
You know what? You doing what?
Yeah, somebody asked if I'm touring. I say I'm touring my house right about now.
But you know what? If you go to the joydegrew.com website, you can look at her upcoming class. She has a class coming up. I think a new class starting sometime in April. And then we will have the implementation of the model class will be happening in May, but that is
mostly do the math class too. Remember the one?
Yeah, that's all for folks who've already attended the classes. So so you have to attend the class to go to that one, but there's and the implementation class, you have to have gone to the course too. So if you're interested in the course, check it out. It's on joydegrew.com. Otherwise, we will see you next Wednesday, folks. Bye.
Bye.
Good to see you. Oh, wait. And not forget, go to organiconeness.org because that is a wonderful organization that has lots of tips on food and how to build up your immune system during this time. Yes, Saida Segovia Taylor has Organic Oneness. It's an amazing organization in Chicago. Check her out and support your own wellness and the wellness of people around you. Okay?
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.